My name is Natasha Bynoe. I'm also known as DJ Lady Envy, and I'm also known as a historian as well. As DJ Lady Envy, I've been in broadcasting for I was in broadcasting for over 28 years. I started when I was 15, and I retired last year, actually, on my birthday, August 11th, 2021.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi Ewafo, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started into this episode.
I broadcasted to Ghana actually for about 10 years on YFM, and I was on Jams 100 in Nigeria, and we were also
That's
on.
absolutely fantastic.
Yes, 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 yes. We
Yeah.
were promoting Caribbean music, Caribbean culture, because my parents are from Barbados, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm first generation American, born in New York City, and raised in New York City and Montreal as well. And so I, knowing my roots, I decided to try to help, teach more about Barbadian culture as well as the Caribbean culture as well. Outside of that, let's see, I became a historian probably about 2015, and I've decided to do that full time as a historian. My area of specialization is the transatlantic slave trade, West African history, as well as slavery within the Caribbean and the Americas. But more so, I'm more focused on what happened in West Africa and Central Africa as well.
That's absolutely important. But just for the record, you are currently in New York or in Barbados?
I'm in Barbados.
Okay, all right, fine. But the project that we are going to be speaking about shortly, which is where you are executive director, is it in New York or in Barbados also?
Well, it's based in New York, the African Diaspora Institute of Cultural Exchange and Historical Research, Inc. Yes, we're a nonprofit that's based in New York City. We just basically started up and we're still in the setting up frame,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that we're still trying to figure out exactly where we're going to be going for the next 5 to 10 years. But our mandate is to help bridge the connection between Africa and the Caribbean and basically her diaspora, not just the Caribbean, but as well as America and those within around the world as well.
That's interesting. And also because here we are, our focus point is the diaspora. So irrespective of where you might find yourself, whether you are in China or whatever, it doesn't matter as long as you have the African root. We are sisters and brothers here, and we have a lot of time here just having a good time. All right, now help us to understand you because this podcast actually is based on the people or on us. So we take the time to know the individual that come here to speak to us. How did you begin to find interest in what you currently do today? Tell me when you were still young then. Tell me about that.
So I was born and raised in New York City, like I said, to Barbadian parents. Both mother and father from Barbados, and migrated to the U.S. in the 1960s. They had me in the late 1970s. I was born in 1976, so I'll be 46 this year. Very proud of my age.
Oh, come
Let's
on,
see.
that's okay.
No, because I know people don't like to say their age. So I'm like, no. The older I get, the more I love to say it. So.
All right, we're listening to you.
So from there, let's see, about 14 or 15, I decided that I wanted to be in communications. I didn't know exactly where. So I started actually working at a number of record labels. I worked for Def Jam Records, EMI Records. Under EMI Records, I was assigned to Arrested Development and Janet Jackson as well in publicity. And under Def Jam, I worked for Def Jam. I think Def Jam, it was DMX when he first came out. I know for sure because I remember promoting his album. And I remember, who was it? Redman and Method Man were one. But with Def Jam, there was an amalgamation, many artists that were signed to the label. And then from there, I actually went to work for KRS-One. Excuse the noise, sir. I live on a highway, so you'll hear a lot of traffic going back and forth.
It's okay.
Yes. So, yes, I worked for KRS-One. I was his assistant for about a year or so. And then I decided to move to radio because I realized the industry was starting to change. This is where you sort of change from vinyl and tapes to CDs and MP3 players. And I realized that the industry was starting to shrink because, many people, it was being restructured. So a lot of people were starting to lose their jobs. And because of that, it became more competitive. And I don't like competition. So I
Really? You
decided,
don't like competition?
no, I like to keep my stress levels down.
Okay.
So yes, so I decided to go into radio. And I remember when I first started working at WNWK in New York City, I what happened? I started as as an apprentice in terms of engineering. I was more or less interested in the engineering side of it. But then I remember one of the hosts had said, you have a really nice voice. You should really try to go for radio. And it sat in my head for a couple of years. I said, okay. Well, I got my, license to be an engineer in New York City. And so I worked for WNWK. I worked for WBAI, which was a talk radio. And then I decided to come to Barbados to reconnect with my family because at the time I was only off and on to Barbados, and I decided to come back in 1998. And while I was here, I learned to DJ. A guy by the name of DJ Leroy and Don took me under their wing and they taught me how to DJ. And through that, I started to transform. I started to really, when I say transform, transforming is a technique in terms of DJing. I became really good at it. I realized, you know what? There's not many female DJs in the whole dance hall Caribbean scene. So maybe I should go for that. All right. So in 1998, I was still started working for Hot 95.3 here in Barbados. And then I moved to St. Lucia for a little bit, the island next door. And then I moved back to New York probably no, I moved to Atlanta about 2000. Then I moved back to New York about 2001 after September 11th. I remember that for sure. And I landed a job at what's the name of the station? Oh my goodness. Why can't I remember the name of the station? I worked there for 9 years. See, old age is creeping in. I can't remember the name of the station. Anyway, I worked for a New York station for over 9 years. And during that time, once I remember, I'll let you know. During that time, I actually became a tour DJ. I was able to do shows with TOK, Elephant Man. I toured. I went to England. I went to France. DJ, just as a DJ alone in terms of the dance hall aspect of it. And in 2009, I said, you know what? I'm 33. It's time to go back to school. So I decided to come back to Barbados to get my education. And I graduated with honors at the University of the West Indies in Cave Hill. And I got my master's at University of West Indies. And now I'm looking to hopefully do my PhD back in New York City because I want to be close to home to my family. In 2000, January 3rd, 2020, we received our nonprofit status, a 501c status from New York City and New York State, and federal as well, to become a nonprofit. So that's when I created the African Diaspora Institute of Cultural Exchange and Historical Research, Inc. And then from there, but let me go back a bit. In 2018, I went to Ghana for the first time, my first trip to Africa. Ironically, I was supposed to go to Zimbabwe first, but then yeah, I had some friends who were journalists because at the time, let me go back. Oh, yeah.
Please go back. We did it. We did all the information. Go ahead.
So, about 2000. So while I was working at the station in New York City, which I cannot remember the name for some reason.
Anyway. We will figure it out later.
Yeah. Right. 9 years, I can't remember the station. Anyway, right.
Hey, come on, don't feel bad about it. Because there are a lot of information in the head. You cannot remember everything. Don't worry, it will come on its own. Don't worry.
Okay. No, I won't force it. So, so back in 2004, maybe about, I got signed to Madison Park Radio Networks. And from there, we had a syndicated show from 2004 to 2015. 2004 to 2015. First, we started in Ghana, and then we expanded to Zimbabwe, Nigeria, South Africa. I know Gambia was one. There were about 10 stations across the African continent. And then in 2015, because I was working here on Slam 101 in Barbados while I was going to school at University of West Indies, I quit radio altogether. I was tired because remember, I started when I was 15. So I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm tired. I don't want to see another radio station. I'm keeping it moving. And then in 2018, I went to Ghana. And ironically, when I was in Ghana, people actually recognized my voice. And it was that's
important.
They didn't know my face, but people were like, I know that voice.
We had it before.
yeah, you know that voice. And they couldn't pinpoint where. But when I let them know, they was like, what happened to you? Why did you take off the show? I used to listen to you every Sunday. And I said, well, it's been over 30 years. Can I take a break? And and they said, no, 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 we want you back on radio. So actually in 2019, we resumed, actually, no, 2018, actually, when I got back to New York City. We resumed the show. Now, normally the show was called Hot Wired, and Hot Wired was just me, myself, and I in terms of DJing. But since I've been out the loop of the music and knew nothing of the music because I had devoted myself totally to history and the field of research, I had a new DJ, and his name was DJ G Spear. He's a great DJ, phenomenal DJ. And he became my resident DJ for the show, which was rebranded to Purifier. And then Purifier was heard in about 6 different African countries. And I think we had I would say probably over 10 million listeners per week. And then I said, okay, that's it. August 11th, my birthday. That's it. I'm done with radio. I don't want to see another radio station. I'm not planning to come back anytime soon. Eh? So yeah, so that's the whole radio situation. I ain't gonna lie to you though. I was watching a show and last night, and it was part of the scenes were in a radio station. I started to feel a sort of way, so don't be surprised if you hear me back on the radio soon, because I started to miss it a little bit, just a little bit. Anyway, but if I do come back to radio, it would totally be it would be about culture. It'll be about interviewing people of historical and cultural significance. If anything, that's the route I'll go, because I'll be quite frank, I'm not very happy with the music today and where it's going. And that's one of the reasons why besides being in the radio for about almost 30 years, I just got tired of the lyrics. And being a historian, know who we are, where we came from. I just couldn't endorse that kind of music anymore.
Can you speak more about that? When you say you don't like the music, you don't like where it's going. Can you explain that a little bit? What do you mean by that? Is it that
okay.
the message is wrong, or they are not laying emphasis on where they're supposed to lay emphasis on?
Yes. Well, see, when I grew up and when I was working in the industry, we had people like Karis One, we had people like EPMD, we had people like, Public Enemy, and there was always a balance. You always had that go-to music that promoted peace and love, and unity in our history. Now I find it's just amalgamation of songs that degrade women, promotes violence, and I just, even with dance hall and hip hop, and I know there are other genres like reggae music. Reggae music, definitely promotes love and unity and peace. And there are hip hop artists who do that, but unfortunately, they're not the ones getting to play. And unfortunately, when we do try to promote that kind of music, it's like people don't want to hear it. The audience, that's not what the audience wants to listen to. So what I did was actually with the show, I would play music, but then I will also counteract that or counterbalance that with, a bit of positive information, like in terms of historical content, or let them know that, look, you could do anything in life, and to love your brother, love your sister, I'll always counteract that message. So there was some form of balance in terms of the energies. But personally speaking, the music used to motivate me, and it no longer does. I'll be very frank, it no longer does.
Fine. Now, I'm interested. You went to, you had this radio program where you were talking to the base, let's put it like that, because you were talking to the people in Africa, and also to the point that they even know your voice, they recognize you very well. So I'm trying to understand what provoked you to do a thing like that, instead of maybe concentrating on people that are living in diaspora. Why was it important for you to take that step?
Because we're working in radio and working on syndicated radio actually in New York City. New York City, not New York City, sorry, America alone is saturated. And the good thing about Afro beats now, Afro beats have become one of the main musics, which I love, by the way, in the United States. So there are a good number of syndicated shows that already promote African music as it is in the US. So with that said, I didn't see the need to do that in terms of promoting African music in America. But I realized that there was not a connection from the Caribbean to Africa in terms of, radio wise. Yes, y'all play dance hall music. Yes, y'all played reggae music, but there was like no representation per se. Like, actual Caribbean person from the Caribbean. Don't mind the accent. Don't mind I have an American accent. You know, um, that this from the Caribbean that can connect with the people in Africa. So, and plus Africa is my love. I love everything about Africa. I
All
love,
right,
and
that's good.
if I could learn every language, I would. If my brain could store every African language, I would learn every last one. Ah, I love Africa.
That's great. That's great. Is the motherland, so we have every reason to love it. That is where we are coming from.
Yes,
All right.
yes,
Now,
yes.
what about the feedback? Like, you know, I mean, now you are looking at the mirror, is project your image back to you, So when you are doing this program, you are talking with people that are on the other side of the world, no? Because you are in New York, or maybe even if you were maybe speaking directly from Barbados, what did you see as a projected image back to you? What did the people say back to you that are maybe listening to you in Ghana or in Nigeria or in South Africa?
They love the music, and they would always ask me what part of Jamaica is Barbados in. I'm like, Barbados is a totally different country by themselves, and that's another reason why I also wanted to represent Barbados too, because everyone knows Jamaica for their music and the food and the culture, but when it comes to other places like Antigua, people might know Trinidad because of Masha Montano. Some people know Barbados due to what's his name? Eddie Grant. Eddie Grant put Barbados on the map, as well as Alistair Hines, Edwin Yearwood. These are some people that Africans would know if they follow the soca trend. But yeah, I wanted more representation of the Caribbean, not just with Jamaica or Trinidad, but of the other Caribbean islands within Africa. So they were very always curious as to where this place was and what do we know, like how does the Bayesian sound like, just information about our culture, basically.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's great. It's interesting.
yeah.
Now, you didn't even say anything about Barbados in terms of why should people come to visit Barbados? Tell me, say Barbados for me. Tell me a little bit about it.
Barbados to me is one of the most beautiful islands in the Caribbean. Now, all Caribbean islands are absolutely gorgeous, and I'm going to preface this by saying, look, the Caribbean islands are what they are only because the people came from Africa, made different stops in the boat. So that technically we're all the same people. It's just that some may have gotten off in Barbados, some may have gotten off in Carriacou, some may have gotten off in Grenada, St. Vincent, and such. But every Caribbean island, first of all, has its own uniqueness. Barbados, which was the second English colonized Caribbean island. We were settled in 1627. So we have, I think, either the second or third oldest parliament in the world. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was Bermuda or Bahamas that came first. I can't remember. But yeah, we have a lot of the people here are beautiful. Not only the topography of the land, our history is amazing. We're one of the only Caribbean islands that's never been invaded or taken over by another nation. So, for example, Jamaica, were taken over by the Spanish and then the English in 1666. You have certain, I think St. Lucia had Spanish rule, sometime French rule, and English rule. So when you go to St. Lucia, you'll hear like an amalgamation of French, a little bit of Spanish, a little bit, English. They speak English, of course. But Barbados is never. So, we are unique in that sense. But we just have so much to offer as an island. We have caves, we have pristine beaches, beautiful people, great food, great culture, great nightlife. Well, not due to COVID now, but hopefully when when the pandemic is over, we'll be able to open back up and as we say, open up and crank. Meaning, like, we'll be able to open up and be ourselves again. I can't wait for that moment. But what else about Barbados? I'll just tell you that it's just this friendliness, but not only that too. When I go to Ghana, I feel like I'm home in Barbados. The temperament is almost the same in terms of the attitudes and the
That
mindset.
that is a high vibe, That is the energy, of the people.
Yes,
That is
yes,
life,
Yes, 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 yes.
That's
You
lovely.
know, we like I remember when I was growing up because I would come here every now and then, and I would come here every now and then, and I was always wondering why they sound so mad and so aggressive. But when I went to Africa, I realized we talk very aggressive, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. So I just think that is that's just there's so many cultural traits and similarities we have. It's just absolutely amazing.
That is interesting. No, it's always that thing you may mention. It's always very important to to know that because we live basically. When you look at a human being, it will appear as if maybe you were born. You said maybe for example you were just like 40 or 40, 46, 7 years, no, but that is not the
Mhm.
whole of your existence. You are a replicant of people that have been here for thousands and thousands of years. All those images are stored in your head. It depends on how you are able to tap into it. Your life didn't start 45 years ago or 50 years ago. It's a continuation. It's linked to many other things that have been there. So that is a very important thing to. Okay, people like me. This is where they are coming from. This is how they talk. So it is not accident. It is purely natural.
It's true. It's true. And you know what's amazing, right? My mom did her DNA test, and she came back 60% Yoruba. My dad is Fulani, but my mom also has. She's also Akan, a bit of Akan in her, and she also has. I don't know where in Mali, but she also has some Mali in her as well. And she also has some Senegambia as well. So I don't know if she's Mandinka as well. I don't know, but I know she's definitely 60% Yoruba. And what's really amazing is I started learning about Orishas, right? And I started learning about the different spiritual systems of the Yoruba. And it's amazing. We've been practicing Orisha and didn't even know it. We do this every day. You know, the whole yin and the yang, the good and the bad, and the different gods, and how the mindset and how we see certain things. I'm like, what? And to me, it's just amazing because it's to me it's the genetic memory coming out. If you understand what I mean, like what you just said.
Exactly. It's time. I look at it like a hard disk of information that is stored there. Of course, because you
Hmm.
don't use it doesn't mean it's not there. But if you know how
Yes,
to use it, it's a resource that is available for you. Now, I think this is
yes,
also why it is very important that we have experts like you who are trying to interpret the history and help people understand that you don't lack any resources. It's there for you. You need to know that you need to understand how to connect to your ancestors, the message that they left for you. They have been
yes,
here all because of you. But if you don't make
yes.
use of it, it's nobody's fault. You are going to suffer. That is, you know. Uh, now, this it makes me very, very emotional when we talk about
Passionate.
our history,
Yes,
though, because
yes.
we are the only people in the world who have everything in terms of how the world has been structured, but we are completely ignorant of it. We don't know. And because we don't know, we
Mm.
suffer. We need to suffer if we refuse to know what we're supposed to know. All right, now
Hmm.
tell me, in terms of history, which area did tell me you were making mention of the fact that you concentrate on slavery and West Africa. Can you be more
Hmm.
specific in which area you are concentrating in and what is your message that you are trying to pass across? Because to us, Africans in the diaspora, history is absolutely important. We need to understand our bearing in the world. Help us, please.
Hmm. Well, I so like I said, I came in 2018. Um, I was supposed to go to Zimbabwe at first to learn about the different ancient civilizations in Zimbabwe, but that's when Mugabe had stepped down, and then there was a little bit of turmoil. And my friends who were journalists at the time just went off the radar, so I got really scared. I said, "Okay, nope, not coming to Zimbabwe. I'm going to Ghana." And when I got to Ghana, well, not before I got to Ghana, I had actually while I was on radio, I connected with Kate Coast Castle, and I connected with one of the directors at the time, and I told him, "Okay, look, I'm coming to Ghana. I'm looking for a PhD topic. What do you suggest? But I want it in the realm of the slave trade. I want to learn more about that." So, all right, I'll make you an intern at the Ghana Museum and Monuments Board, and we will go in the field, and we will speak to the various griots and the kings and different people, and see if that might massage my mind to come up with a topic for my, or at least an area within, because the transatlantic slave trade has been well documented, well documented. But when I got to Ghana, and I went to, where did we go first? I think we went up north first. We went to Pickerel. Yeah, we went to Pickerel. And then we went to Salaga, we went to Sakpuli, and we came down. And I started listening and I started recording, I recorded all these interviews. And it dawned on me, like, wait a second. This was a slave market. Here was a slave market. Here was a slave market. How many slave markets were there? You know? And then I started looking at Nigeria. I started looking at Togo, looking at Benin. And I said, no, I want to know, like, when it comes to trans-Saharan slave trade, and the markets and the stops along the caravan routes were well documented, but there was nothing for the transatlantic or even domestic slave trade. So when I got back to New York, I decided after my internship, I just want to go back before I forget again. And you're right about about who we are as a people, because I remember when I was working at Cape Coast Castle and the Almina Castle, I remember one tour group I was with. It was a group from California, students, about 16 of them, and we were at the door of no return in Almina. It was in Almina, and there were probably about four Black students, and the rest were all, other races. And the four Black students huddled together, and they were crying their eyes out, you know, and they were all consoling each other. And one of the teachers had said, one of the professors had said, "Don't feel guilty for surviving." And so you are a product of people who survived this harrowing, horrible, you know, trip across this middle passage. And they said, don't feel guilty. He said, just know that your ancestors did everything possible for you to be here today, and that made me cry, and even today, sometimes when I'm just watching TV or if I'm just laying in bed about to fall asleep, I try to put myself in the position of my ancestors, at the bottom of the boat or the top of the boat, if they were women, depending, or, separated, depending which boat, but some of the women were put on top and the men were put on the bottom. But I try to put myself in their position and try to understand how they may have felt between, I don't know, 2 to 6 months at a time, being on board and then coming to a foreign land and not knowing anybody or knowing the language. You get where I'm coming from. So yes, so in that aspect, I just want people to know that we are definitely product of people who survived. To go back to the other point, so yes, I started looking at the different spaces of enslavement or captivity within the West and Central African landscape. And it was just absolutely phenomenal. So if you get a chance, go to enslavedspaces.org, right? And you will see the map. We have different categorizations. We have markets. We call them captive markets because to be a slave is a legal term, and technically they did not become a slave until they got to the Americas. When I say the Americas, I mean the Caribbean, America, as well as South America as well. And so when you go there, you'll be really surprised to see how many spaces was really devoted to, to the slave trade itself, Um, so that's what we're doing. Oh yeah, so I was talking about the market. So yeah, we have the markets. On the markets we have captive markets, and we have the trans-Saharan slave markets. Well, captive markets. We also have places of freedom. So resistance. So in Nigeria, you will have the sacred forest. Kunazinga Kingdom in Angola was a space of refuge for many captives who were taken by the Portuguese. So we have different, pockets of areas of resistance. Our scope is between 1440. I've read that the first account I found of capture of people capturing Africans were in 1440 by Mauritania. I can never pronounce the name correct, so please forgive me. Um, and then, so 1440 up until 1860, but we're extending that to 1874 because even my Nigerian researchers are telling me that slave ships were coming up into the 1880s, but I can't find any evidence of it. So we're expanding, as much as we can, because we know that Brazil's slave trade ended our slavery ended in 1888. They were one of the last. Um, what else? So yes, we have the freedom and resistance. We also have European trading ports, our trading settlements. So you'll have under that like castles, forts, factories, or trading posts. Factories are like the most beginning, it's the beginning stages of a fort or castle. before I get into that stage. So like, merchants or people from Europe will come and set up basically a little trading post made mostly of materials that are from the area. So like, sand, natural materials. So there's not much evidence of these factories to this day. I've read accounts that people will build these factories, and if it's a good rain come along, it'll wash away the entire factory. So today you'll find like forts and castles who because they're made of uh, harder material. I can't tell you. I don't want to say the exact. I don't want to say brick because I don't know. The exact material. And then you have cultural and religious spaces. So, for example, in the Kingdom of Dahomey, one of the kings would send. They would have the captives, but he might want to send messages to his family members who may have died. So he would sacrifice a captive to send a message to their family members. And to me, those people are very important. I don't want to leave out anybody, if you understand me, anyone who may have been captured and may not have been sent to the Americas, because it's not really about that. It's about the Africans who were taken with the intentions of being sent either to the north or to the south, or even kept in the country to work as a domestic uh, enslaved person. So there's various different stages and categories, classifications of enslaved spaces. And when you click on a particular space, you will actually, if you can get once we have the history, we will put it there as well. And we always cite our sources because the site is for not only for the everyday person, but it's also for academics as well. I just also want to know that if you do go on the site and you see pinpoints that are blue with three dots in it, the triads in it, that represents a particular market that was used for the domestic, trans-Saharan, and transatlantic slave trade, and we were able to find evidence of all three. Those with just a singular circle in it, those are local captive markets, and the one with the squares are trans-Saharan. So yeah, but I think as a historian, a lot of emphasis has been placed on out migration, extracting Africans out of Africa, but we don't really look at what happened on the ground or even have a better understanding of what happened on the ground to really get a better understanding of it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Thank you very much for that. I find it very interesting because, like I said before, when it comes to history, very little have been done on our part. No, because you said before that a lot have been documented about the transatlantic slave. That is true. But the question is whether actually we do understand it, whether it had actually been documented from our point of view. I think it was, I don't know who was saying this, that Africa is one of the most, it was written about people, but is the least understood at the end of the day. Because it's not a question of how many books have been written about Africa, but from which point of view are you writing the story? And that is why I say it is very important that African in the diaspora particularly, because I believe that while a lot of Africa, of course, talking of the Africa that have been conquered by the European, because now we basically respond according to the impulses of the European, not according to our own, not according to our own understanding. Because it is very easy to condemn a people. It is very easy to confuse a people. It's also very easy to miseducate the people. And by the time you succeed in miseducating the people, you can actually make them act like animals. They can forget where they have been coming from. It is possible because it passed through the process of education. So now, I think it is our duty as Africa, by us, I mean, those who are sort of, say, enlightened, whether you are in Africa or in the diaspora, to sort of look at the story again and retell it. It is absolutely important because if we don't do this, we don't even know where we are going to start from.
But, and that's another component I forgot to mention. Despite the fact that we use primary sources, for me, what's most important is the African voice, is that confirmation. So what we do, the last part of it, once we compile the information, we actually get in contact with a researcher or a professor who's au fait or is specialized in the history in that particular country or a particular region or area to confirm, because we don't want to put spaces that they don't know, that might be wrong, if you understand where I'm coming from. Not only that, too, it's important that we understand, even though I am a descendant of Africans, there's a lot about the African mindset and how Africans understand things and how they communicate that I don't understand. So it's important to me that I also get that African voice in there, who is African and who lives amongst the people, who knows the language, who knows the culture, because they will have a totally different perspective than I would. You know, I'm coming from the perspective of an African American as well as an Afro Caribbean. I'm now learning the African perspective. But unfortunately for me, I honestly believe my default will always be that of an African American. As much as I can learn as many African languages as I want, I didn't grow up there. If you understand what I'm saying. So for me, it's important that I understand the African perspective. And the only way I can really truly do that is by through someone who's in Africa and who can understand and communicate, the histories of a particular space. Because what we might call as a captive market, a slave market, might be something totally different for somebody else. Language is a beautiful thing, but it's also a scary thing in the sense that, what I may perceive to be a meaning of a particular word or a symbol, but for you guys, it may have 10 to 12 or who knows, different variations of explanation that I won't be able to perceive. If you understand where I'm coming from.
Absolutely.
So for me, it's very important that I have that African voice who says, yes, okay, this is how this land or how this particular space was used. This is what the name of this particular space means. Not only means for this particular group of people, but for this group of people. If you get where I'm coming from, to give it a much deeper understanding of how spaces were utilized, especially during the transatlantic and transsaharan slave trade.
All right. Now, in that phase of it, where you try to talk to the people, the African historian, because there are people who have been documenting the history. African have been documenting history for a long time. Okay. So, what did you find out? You are coming from New York. Of course, you have a lot of, like you already said before, a lot of documentation about the transatlantic slave trade. No problem about that. When you get to Ghana, did you confront this with the Ghanaian historian, people who narrated the story? I wanted you to go a little bit deeper in that. How did you engage with them, and what did they share with you? What did you make as your conclusion at the end of the day?
Well, the historians were very well. They were very they were open. They were definitely open to share their research, to share their knowledge. I will say, however, when I did get on the ground in terms of the different villages, I found that a lot of elders were skeptical of talking about the slave trade. I take it for a number of reasons, in the sense that one, there might be some form of guilt that's associated with it. Um, and as well, it's shame for them. They see it as shameful. But for me as a descendant, it's vitally important that I understand what happened. So I did meet some type of hesitancy and resistance. But once my interpreters let them know that, it's important not only for me, but for the people of the diaspora to really know who they are, then they were able to tell me stories of what may have happened. So, what's really amazing is that there are so many stories of rescue or attempted rescue. As a descendant, they'll make you think, oh, okay, they captured you, your family didn't want you, so we took you. No, our family wanted us. Our family fought for us. Many families followed the slave trail, and tried to free their loved ones at a particular point. Some got caught up in trying to save their family members, and some were successful in it. I've met people who are descendants of those people who were freed, and they have these stories to this day. We don't know those stories, but those stories are also told in their oral histories. Those stories are also told in their songs. But once again, you have to understand the language, and you have to understand the culture, and you have to understand the context and how words are used, because like I said, I may have a meaning of word, but for you as an African, it'll mean like 10 different things. You get where I'm coming from. But yeah, so when I spoke to the different kings and the elders, I did meet some hesitancy, but then, I did meet some elders who were more than happy to share their experience and what they not experienced, to share their stories that have been passed down from generations to generations.
It is important to talk about these things. The reason we learn history is so that we should be able to get the lesson from it and change our ways, no? But if we don't talk about it, because honestly speaking, of slavery, very little is discussed in Africa, even among African elite. And like you pointed out, it appeared as if it's something shameful. How can we be talking about that? By
Mm-hmm.
doing that, of course, we give the other side of the story the opportunity to tell it, to say, actually, this is the way it is. They don't even have a point of view on it. This is why I want to reinforce again that for the African diaspora and to the Africans at home who can write, there is nothing stopping you. Please continue to write because we need to tell our story.
Mm-hmm.
We need to tell it from our own
Yes.
point of view. Because story is nothing
Mm-hmm.
more than just two words, his and story. So, sorry, history actually is what I want to say. No? So, if it is not said from your point of view, it appears that you are not really there. You are begging the favor of another person to just include you in the story, no? But
Yeah, but you're right, and also don't forget her story is equally important to his story too.
yeah.
But and you're right about that because I forgot my point. I was going to tell you.
Anyway,
Uh,
you wanted to contest the fact that it shouldn't be his story, but also her story. That is fine. I understand it. Accept it.
yeah, but no, but I remember now. I remember now. And you're right. When I got to Ghana and I started hearing different stories and different histories, I'm like, why haven't I read this in a book? Where's and as an academic, we have to have written evidence in order to show the proof. If you get where I'm coming from. Um, and I hate the fact that African orality, I can't pronounce it, Orality, um, is not really taken seriously because they say, well, it can be changed, it can be doctored, but no, that's the way we tell our story. That's the way that we've been able to pass down our history. More so than having it written. And not only that, though, but there was a good number of African civilizations who had writing systems, who had their own uh, glyphs, and symbols, that they had their own basically, yeah, their writing system. Sorry, the brain's not working 8 o'clock this morning, but yeah. So that's, we it's important that we tell our own story because there's so much that has not been said. There's so much that we don't know, and it's within the people themselves. So you're right. I agree with you. They have to start writing. They have to start writing.
Thank you for that. All right, now coming back to this West Africa, where you are putting a lot of energy. Apart from slavery, which other aspect of West African are you looking into, or are you concentrating only on the transatlantic slave trade and the involvement of West Africa?
For now, yes, but the flip side is to also do more research on two other areas. I want to look at those which I've kind of started already. Captives who were taken but were sent back to Africa. So, in 1816, Barbados had a rebellion. Yeah, Barbados had a rebellion where it's called Bussa Rebellion. Right, It's actually one of the first major rebellions Barbados has had from the time it was colonized. There were conspiracies, and yes, and there were other ways that Barbados fought against the Barbadian enslaved people fought against the system of slavery. But this is one of the biggest rebellions that's been documented. And in 1818, 88 captives, prisoners from that particular rebellion were sent to Nova Scotia. And then from there, I think two had passed away in Nova Scotia. They were sent to Sierra Leone in Africa. Um, so that's one particular area I'm looking to look into as to what happened to the Barbadians in Sierra Leone when they got there, as well as to find out if there's any family members that we may not know about. Not only that, too, as you know, a good number of captives who came to the Americas, who knew either how to read or write or learned how to read and write. You wrote books, and of course these books were a part of the anti-slavery movements. So it's also important to keep in mind that a lot of these books may not have been written by the persons themselves, but more or less say a supporter of the anti-slavery movement. So when you read it, you have to like kind of keep that in mind if you understand where I'm coming from. But nonetheless, I'm very interested. There's one, I forgot his name. He's from Gambia, it's in the Gambia region, and I've been able to get in contact with his family to learn more about his family because apparently he came to Barbados and he came to America. From what I remember reading, he went to Trinidad. He was a Muslim, and I understand that he was one of the few Muslims to start a Muslim community in Trinidad, and then he went back to I'm not sure if it's Senegal or Gambia, but I have everything written documented. So these are areas that I want to look into. I'm very interested as to what happened after they got there. Another area also too are civilizations. You know, I want to know who we are, who we were. No, not who we were, who we are as a people. I'm correcting my language. Who we are as a people.
Because we are seeing who we are.
Yes, who we are. you know, I want to learn about the Sangha, the Susu, the Mandinka. I want to learn about their great civilizations and learn about their political and social systems and just to have a better understanding because unfortunately a lot of people think that we came over as slaves, as captives, and that's all we ever were, and that's so far from the truth. So yeah, that's those are my two other areas of interest after enslaved spaces.
All right. Well, here, of course, here in this podcast, we reflect, we think, and we think freely. We don't have any limitation apart from insulting ourselves and insulting people. No. So now, when we even say that in Africa, people don't write, I don't know if that is even true. If people were taken away from the Yoruba land and they were taken to America, they were beaten. In fact, they were tortured so that they could forget about themselves. And yet they were able to reproduce what they have had at home in terms of culture. Because how did the African diaspora come to understand even the spirituality of the Yoruba people? That even people in Yoruba land some of them have even forgotten. Is it not because they have
Hmm.
carried this information along with them? How did they
And they
carry
kept
it?
it.
So, of
Hmm.
course, they didn't write it in a way that you can understand it, therefore they don't write. Because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we're talking of the transmission of information so that it can be interpreted, it can then be understood. If that is
Hmm.
the case, you can't say that the people didn't have a way of conserving their information. From the field of academia, writers, researchers like you, when we say, or when you, I'm not a researcher, okay, me, I'm just the one who talk to people. So when we say that Africa don't write, what do we really mean in this sense? I'm not sure I understand it perfectly.
Well, that's why I said to you that first of all, we have. When I say we, I mean Africans. All right, I include myself as an African. Um, we had so many different writing systems. Certain societies had different writing systems, um, but they might not be in the form of what you call a letter. It would be in the form of a glyph, which are symbols or are basically something that's written but it has meaning to it. I think that's the best way I can explain it. Um, and to answer your question in regards to how did the culture and spiritual retention live on within the Caribbean, is because we passed it on to our descendants. Like I told you, we were practicing Yoruba spirituality, and even though we were doing it, I was totally amazed. I was like, "Ma, when you say this and when we do this, this is part of who you are." And she was like, "I didn't know," you know. Um, so that makes me think that not only was it the DNA, but also I'm thinking socially, maybe part of our growing up, that was something that was passed down to us as well unconsciously. So there's so many different unconscious um, uh, cultural identities and ideas that were passed down from our ancestors, and we don't know, or we can't identify it as this is something African. But to go back to your writing, I agree with you. We do write, we do have a lot of historians, but I just question why aren't there books in the libraries in New York City, like Dr. Paraby, in Ghana. She wrote a phenomenal book. Her book is somewhere around. Oh yeah, her book is over there. When I go to the New York State Public Library, I can't find it. Why is that? Even Dr. Musa Torre in University of Cape Coast, it has a book as well. I can't find it. Why is that? Um, I have to go to Africa to get these books and then to come back home, and to read them and get a better understanding. But you're right. We have different ways of retaining our history, and it's orally, and we pass it down from generation to generation. When I'm in Africa, I feel a sense of pride and confidence coming from Africans. And I don't know if Africans really recognize this, but I see it, that yes, we in the diaspora are proud, but there's a certain level of pride of knowing who you are that we just simply don't have, and it's the truth. And that's something that I absolutely admire about Africans, is because you are able to pass down your history. You're able to go back thousands of years. When I speak to the Sultan of Niger, or when I speak to the Chief of Timbuktu, he literally spends about 10 to 15 minutes telling me about his family history going back generations, at least 1,000 years or more. I can't do that. For me personally, I'm lucky because I can go to 1750 because I'm a researcher. But for the average person, they can't go back no more than maybe 100 years if they're lucky. You know where I'm coming from? So
Yeah.
there's a certain pride and a certain confidence when you're able to pass down these histories. When I spoke to the chief of Timbuktu a couple of months ago, I could hear the pride in his voice. And he's calling these names and he's saying, "I am the son of so and so," and he's going back 600 AD. And I'm amazed. And it's just not with him. Like I said, the Sultan of Niger and various different not only kings or queens, but even the average person. I spoke to a friend of mine just last night who's a Fanti. I said, "Well, how far back can you go back with your history?" He says, "Oh, I can go back thousands of years." We can't do that, So, yeah.
All right. At the end of the day, we are in one boat.
Yes.
All of us, we are together. So I think even like Marcus Garvey was saying, that the African in diaspora and both the African at home, all of us, we are going to fight for the same front, because I think Dr. Henry Clark was also saying the same thing, that you need to remember that when they took away Africans, they didn't took away Barbados or Brasilia or the African America. They took away Africans. So you must
Yes.
understand that you are a people. Okay, first of all, we are also peoples, but we are a people. We are a group of people who are being given a certain treatment because we are a group of people. So we must take advantage of that too and begin to reinforce our line. Because you look at the European, for example, in the United States, if a book has been written about a certain war in France or in Germany, they make sure that they get this book available for person to read in New York. They are trying to make sure that they don't forget themselves. If there are books available, because I know that in Nigeria there are lots of people that are writing. I know that. You don't expect the European to be getting this book and bringing it to their children to read. It is our duty now as Africans in the diaspora to make sure that we are looking for a way to connect all of us wherever we are. You don't have money, but can you sing? Sing. You don't need to be a millionaire to be singing now. You cannot sing, you can write? Write. You don't need to sing to write. You cannot write, you can talk to people, talk. All of us have different possibility of making sure that the line is not broken. Because what we need is to be able to connect from thousands of generations. Because when we can do this, then we can be proud. When somebody come in front of you and start telling you that you are this, you are that, no, I'm not that. I know where I'm coming from. That is very, very important. If we leave this work to the people in Africa alone to do, they will not be able to do it because Africa is not free. If we leave it only to the people in the diaspora to do it, they cannot do it because they are not directly connected. But if the people in the diaspora and the people back home in Africa are able to do it, nothing can stop them. Because that is how every people do it. The Chinese do the same. The Japanese do the same. The Europeans do the same.
Yes,
so we cannot expect other people to do this job for us. It is our job. How do we succeed in it? That is the question.
Hmm. How do we do it succeedingly? I think it's well, one that's actually one of the for the African Diaspora Institute and Cultural Exchange and Historical Research Inc. Sierra, that is one of our um, that's the main focus of us is to help bridge that gap, to help bring us together as one people. It's very important for us to do that. But outside of that, it takes understanding. It takes, one of the things that I am amazed by, and it still amazes me actually. When I get into a cab, or sometimes when I meet someone, well, it probably happens in a cab because I have time to talk to the driver, right? Or sometimes if I'm on the train and I, speak to the person next to me and I can see the African or I hear African accent, I ask them. So I ask them, oh, you from where are you from? First, I don't assume anything. I say, where are you from? And they say, oh, I'm African. First, it's no. Let me do this correctly. So this is me all. So where you from? All happy, gun ho, and they're like, oh, I'm from Africa, right? I'm like, okay. What part of Africa? Ah, I'm from West Africa. Okay. What part of West Africa? Ah, I'm from Ghana. Okay. Which part of Ghana? Ah, why? You from Ghana? All of a sudden they started coming down a little bit. I'm like, no, but I'm just curious which part of Ghana. Or say Gambia. I'm from Banjo. Oh, you're from Banjo. Okay. Which part of Banjo? Uh-uh. Your husband from Gambia? How you know about Gambia? And all of a sudden they become the friendliest person ever. But at the end of the day, I realized that they tell me that African Americans tend to not know, the African continent, know the people, know, even the names of places in Africa, and it's like this total disconnect that you say. So when they do meet an Afro Caribbean, an African American who does know about their culture and their history and even politics, they're like amazed by it, And in my head, I'm thinking, this should not be. This should not be the case. My people should know. Why I say people, I mean Americans, like they should know about people in Africa, and just the same as Africans should know about people in the diaspora. Who are they? What language do they speak? Who are they basically? So yes, I think it takes a level of understanding each other, a respectful understanding of each other, because we're going to come with different ideas and ideologies. But I'm going to say this, and some people might get mad at me, and at this point, I don't know. But we and the Americans, as not only as Americans, but also Afro Caribbeans, we have some toxicity to us. We all do. Even, I'm sure Africans do too. But, we have some issues. And one of the things I don't want my African Americans and my Afro Caribbean people doing is coming over with their negative, bad ways and to me, corrupting my African people. So, for example, in 1865, over 300, well, yeah, over 300 Barbadians went to Liberia, right, on their own. And but at the time, you had a good number of African Americans who went to Liberia, and I'm thinking, what happened when they got there? And I realized that African Americans and some Afro Caribbeans were treating the Africans like how they were treated in America, with segregationist ideas and trying to subjugate them into I don't want to say slavery, but if you understand where I'm coming from, so it's like they brought but the thing is they only brought what they knew. So that's what happened. They only brought what they knew. So if they know that they came from a society that looked down on them, when they got to Africa, even though the point was to be with your brother and sister, they had the idea of coming of civilizing the African. How are you going to civilize the African? The African is already civilized. You get where I'm coming from. So this was the mindset back then, and in a weird way, it's still the mindset now. When I speak to a lot of African Americans, it's like, oh, I must go teach my brothers and sisters. No, humble yourself. You learn from them. They are the source. You get where I'm coming from. So I do believe that it takes a level of respectful understanding of both sides of the coin, and that's the only way that as a people we could come together. Because I don't like when my people try to come over there and dominate Africans. my African people alone.
You
They're
know,
good.
that is the truth. In that we need to be humble. We need to understand where we are going. We need to understand what is at stake to start with, no? Because a lot of things are involved, like you actually pointed out. There are a lot of issues here, no? But we must understand that it is our survivor that we're talking about.
Mhm.
I want to repeat again what Dr. Henry Clark was saying on that it is not about African American. It is not about Afro Brazilian. It is not about Afro European. It is about African. Are you an
Mhm.
African? It is not about
Mhm.
the little division that we have. Okay, because I'm a Muslim, so let care for the Muslim people in Africa. Oh, we are talking about the Jewish people in Africa. No, you don't. You are shooting yourself in the foot.
The fact that there's so many divisions amongst us as a people, you know, and everyone wants to be the right one, and everyone wants to impose their views or point of view on the other person, and then we tend to discount or cancel that particular group or people because they don't hold the same beliefs. But at the end of the day, like you said, we are one people. We are African, and we have to understand that, and we have to you respect that. It all comes down to respect. I remember when I was in Ghana, there were certain things I didn't like. I'm very honest. There's certain things I didn't like about the culture, right? And my mentor said to me, "That's fine. You don't have to like it, but you still have to respect it. You don't have to partake in it, but just have to respect it." And I'm like, you are so right. And I am no one to sit there and say, you must do it this way. No, I respect what you do, you know. And because of that, I have a better and deeper understanding and appreciation for Africa because I understand not everything I'm going to like, as a person. And I think a lot of people need to adopt that idea, that I might not like it, but this is their culture and therefore I have to respect it. I'm no one to come and change their point of view. So I think at the end of the day, just understanding uh, the people, the culture, and respecting them. To me, is what's most important. And eventually, hopefully, we'll see the bigger picture as one people. We're too divided. I agree with that, and it hurts. It really does, because as a people, we could be so much further. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're far already. We survived.
we,
That's
we.
we survived. But we could do a lot more. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, looking at your project, the African Diaspora Institute of Culture and Exchange, what is the primary goal of this project? Because I find it very interesting. We are moving towards the end of it.
Okay. So the nonprofit basically is to help create programs, culture exchange programs, as well as to facilitate historical research that will help promote the unification or understanding of Africans and her or its diaspora. So that's really about it. We're in the phase right now of working on our strategic plan. So that's why I really can't talk too much about that because we're still in the setting up the operation phase because we're really, really new. And because of COVID, things were slowed down a lot. Um, but our main goal is to create programs and projects to help, people gain a deeper understanding and wisdom about Africa. So whether it's taking someone from America, like a group of people from America to Africa for 5 days to sit down with a particular village or people to speak to them and to live their life. That's part of it. That's one part of it. Another aspect of it is creating media content. Knowing that I've had 28 years within the broadcasting industry, is definitely creating media content as well, and as well as facilitate the historical research part is my favorite as a historian. Like I always tell people I will gladly hang up every job I have just to do research. I love research. I love reading. I love interviewing people. That's all I want to do for the rest of my life. But unfortunately, I can't. I mean, I can, but so the historical research part is to help other projects, other people, or other organizations, or government entities that might need information or research done. So that's the second arm of Sierra with the
All
institute.
right, now, good. I can see that you really love research. I can see the way you speak about it with passion, and that is really important. Now, what do you do with the document, the material that you gather? Is it that you publish a book or you make it available as a blog, or tell me how do you disburse it to the people?
Well, that's well, I through enslaved spaces is one. That's one of the projects. That's my personal project. And I have this. I just want to say this now. Enslaved spaces is my contribution to the world. You know, and I just hope that the generations after me will pick up enslaved spaces and develop it more after I'm gone. But that's I feel every historian or every researcher should have at least one project, maybe two, that they can contribute to the field of research, historical research, for it can for other generations to pick up as well and develop. So yes, so for me, it came into the idea of enslaved spaces. Um, the other bits of research I do tend to be client based. So I'm also a genealogist as well. So I tend to do a lot of family research for clients and those who just want to know more. So sometimes people who do their DNA, and they get back that they're Mandinka and they would like to know more about the Mandinkas, on a very intricate level, then that's, I would do that as well. And I'm working with different government entities as well in terms of different historical projects. So, it's not all for a book, but, it's also to facilitate clients, both government and non-governmental. And yeah, but hopefully for enslaved spaces is to create a book out of it. Um, and also multimedia. We just hired a art director who has an extraordinary vision. His name is Patrick Dodo. He's an artist in Ghana, and he just created our logo for enslaved spaces. But the next phase for enslaved spaces is to also create a website where we've already started this in 2018, but we had to stop because of COVID. But our plans is to pick it up when we go to. Well, I teach at the University of the Gambia. I also forgot to say that too. I'm an adjunct. I'm an adjunct lecturer at the University of the Gambia. So the plan is to hopefully later on this year to teach in person as well as to gather data about the different societies in Gambia and Senegal. But this is the catch. It will be in English because we are very interested in, the creation stories, the stories of how particular societies were formed. Who are these people? What are your philosophies? What's your spiritual belief system? But it's in their language, And I'm just not talking about, just very surface roundabout information. I want to see places, you know. I want to see places, and I want to know the names of these places because there's something very powerful. And this is another reason why enslaved spaces to me is very powerful too. To know that my mother is 60% Yoruba, then to go on the map and see where the Yoruba lived, it gives it a different meaning to actually say the names of these places, knowing that my ancestors may have been sold in these particular markets, may have passed through these different places, opposed to actually just going to Keiko's Castle or Alameda and say, okay, my ancestors passed through here. Yes, there's a very good chance they did, but there's also a very good chance they didn't. So I'd rather be one step closer to being able to be connected to spaces that my ancestors actually passed through. You understand where I'm coming from? So, so with that said, I totally forgot my point.
No, 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 no.
I'm
The
so
point, the
sorry.
point is very clear that you are you are on course. You are on the ground to really understand
Yes.
the story of these people, where they are coming from. Also, because I wanted to add to that yes, also because these people that we're talking about, they are here today. They are still here. The culture is still
Mm-hmm.
here. You can still speak the
Mm-hmm.
language. The Yoruba that was spoken there, they still the same Yoruba that is spoken today. The spirituality, everything is there. And I particularly like
Mm-hmm.
it that you are not just concentrating only on the surface, but want to go beyond that. That is very important also in the world that we live in today. Also for our
Mm-hmm.
children, for the younger generation that are going to become uh, the owner of the world that we are trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
So this work have an enormous value. Because today people want to remain in the bubble. This is what is happening. So we need to go deep. We need to go deep to be able to understand what is really making the bubble on the surface.
Now I want to ask you. I'm turning the tables. When you saw enslaved spaces, what were your thoughts?
I find it very interesting for the fact that you are sharing value, you are adding information that people didn't know because uh, many people we don't have those information. Okay, many people are referring to Africans because that is our demography, no? Okay, of course, there are a lot of books that have been written about Africa. No, the book that have been written by you is different because this is written by you. So to conclude this conversation that had to do with history, your research, and this project that you have about African diaspora research, what would be your ending part of it? How would you conclude it?
Well, I think you covered everything I'm doing from broadcasting to history very well. All I ask is that we take time to learn who we are as a people and don't judge people. As it stands, me being a family of Yoruba and a family of Fulani says a lot. That we are made up of many people. But we're all one. And to know your history as much as you can, and respect one another. It really hurts my heart when I see Africans disrespect the diaspora, and when the diaspora disrespect the Africans. It really does, because at the end of the day, we all came from the same source. And in terms of history wise, find a project that you can call your own, that can contribute to the historical knowledge as it is. It's very important that we hear more of the African voice, and that's one of the reasons why the second phase of Enslaved Spaces that we do, we collect the oral data, because I want you to be able to hear from the person exactly, the history, their culture, but then it will be interpreted by a professional, in English, so we can understand. Because many times I'll see the history of the Mandinka or the history of the Susu, and it's in their language. I'm like, oh, I can't understand it, all this knowledge, and I can't understand it. So yeah, that's the second phase of it. And if you can, support. You have to support each other, just not mouth wise, but financially too. We have to financially. And I think that's one of my biggest pet peeves is the fact that when I look for grants or when I look for funding for historical research, especially within Africa, I don't find any. They're very limited. But yet I can get grants on understanding the Civil War, King Henry VIII, and all these different, projects. But when it comes to Africa, there's hardly any. So we have to support each other. It's important. Financially, we have to support each other. We have to.
Absolutely.
So, that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sister. I really appreciate that. It's really be very, very rich, the conversation. And I believe that the people that are listening to us, they have a lot of value for me. So thank you very much for it.
And thank you so much for allowing me to come on and discuss the project and talk about myself as well. But hopefully it will garner greater understanding of who we are as a people. And come to Barbados. Come to beautiful Barbados.
That's great. I'm coming to Barbados.
No problem. Let me know when you're coming. By the way, I own vacation rentals, so let me know when you're coming.
All right. That's lovely. That's lovely. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.